and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
That classic pro wrestling event could be a pay-per-view, it could be a major arena card from the territory days, or it could be, as is the case on this week's show, a major television special from a major pro wrestling promotion.
And every single Thursday on social media, we'll post what show the randomizer has selected for the week. So you want to make sure that you're following the show at Wrestle at Random on Twitter and Instagram. The Twitter is the best way to interact with the show, at Wrestle at Random. Give us your
feedback. It is, by the way, I just want to mention that if you follow us on Twitter, you will learn through other people's comments that the randomizer is in fact not gimmicked. If you didn't already realize that by some of the shows that we've ended up reviewing on previous editions of this podcast, it is legit.
The randomizer giveth and it taketh away.
Exactly.
It will give you Canadian Stampede. It will taketh away by giving you Bash at the Beach 2000. So, but yeah, so wrestlingatrandom.com is the website where you can find all the links to subscribe to the podcast. Tell your wrestling fan friends about us. Tell your lapsed fan friends about us. Get everyone to take a trip down memory lane with us, and we are going on a trip down memory lane to 1989. This is May 27th, 1989, for a Saturday night's main event special. I want to tell you a little bit about Saturday night's main event. In 1984's Brawl to End It All and 1985's War to Settle the Score, they were the WWF wrestling specials that aired on the MTV network. The ratings success of these shows helped build excitement for what would be 1985's WrestleMania. The rating success of those shows caught the attention of Dick Ebersol. Dick Ebersol, along with Lorne Michaels, had created Saturday Night Live in 1975. He was an executive at NBC and worked out a deal to bring WWF programming to NBC for Saturday night television specials. On May 11th, 1985, the first Saturday night's main event aired in the time slot normally occupied by Saturday Night Live. Saturday night's main event would air 5 episodes a year, usually around New Year's, March for promoting Mania, May for the post-Mania, a show in the summer, an October Halloween show, and a November show. During its run in the late 1980s, Saturday night's main event would draw impressive ratings. On the March 14th, 1987 show, a battle royal building to WrestleMania 3's main event of Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant drew an 11.6 rating, which to this day remains the highest rating any show has ever done in that time slot. By 1991, Saturday night's main event drew lower ratings for the first time ever than Saturday Night Live. I remember being a child and asking my parents to let me stay up for Saturday night's main event on those special Saturdays.
Absolutely, yeah. It's funny because even though this was, like you said, this aired Central Time, where we both are in Chicago, from 10:30 to midnight, and my parents, particularly my mom, was not a big fan of pro wrestling and was even less of a fan of me watching pro wrestling because this was on during the Saturday Night Live time slot, which I would always stay up and watch on Saturday nights. They let me watch Saturday night's main event. So this was a big deal. It was exciting. And the other thing, I guess, personally for me to note as we move into talking about this show is that this show was just on the heels of WrestleMania 5, which is the second WWF pay-per-view that we as a family ever ordered, but the first one that I watched, and I'll explain that story another time. But yeah, it was I had very little recollection of this show, Jeremy, but it was interesting because I had a very strong recollection of WrestleMania 5.
Oh, as did I. And WrestleMania 5 was a big deal. The build to the Mega Powers exploding was
maybe the best build to a main event in WWF history. I would say almost undoubtedly, if not American wrestling history.
Yeah, a year-long storyline that was so well done, told a great story, and yeah, capped it off with a super fun WrestleMania 5. And like you mentioned, this show takes place on the heels of WrestleMania 5. It is the 21st installment of Saturday Night's Main Event. It took place on April 25th, 1989, from Des Moines, Iowa, at the Veterans Memorial Auditorium. And
that discrepancy in dates is by the way, that's when it was taped, and then it aired. What you said,
aired on May 27th, 1989, on NBC.
Which you could tell as you watch the show, it was definitely taped. The post production elements of this, while not necessarily high tech, were definitely very noticeable. It was also we'll get to the opening videos or the opening promos, but I just have to laugh as Vince McMahon, who it's noted in his later years hates having episodes of his television show from non quote unquote major US cities, so then they just won't say the city. Here he was working his way to that as he derisively says, "We're coming to you from corn country in Des Moines, Iowa."
Yep.
And then he teased it up to Jesse for Jesse to make fun of Iowa as well. So, but yeah, so let's go back to the opening video, Spear, because there's some interesting things, some gems there with the verbiage.
We open with Hulk Hogan cutting a promo behind the thick blue bars of the 80s WWF cage. So we've talked about
in front of a green screen, clearly, and he's obviously holding up a small piece of this cage because it's bobbling around back and forth as he gesticulates as only Hulk Hogan can.
Now, for those who are only familiar with the chain link fence type of a cage in a cage match, in the 1980s, the WWF cage and into the 90s, I think early 90s too, it had that just thick blue bars instead of the chain link fence that you would see the NWA putting on for shows in the same time period.
Yes, it was a cage that when you looked at it, you did not think that it was likely that a man was going to get his head sliced open. As compared to the NWA cages, where it was a much more violent spectacle, and we'll get into it later. The rule set was completely different, but Hogan here, he's wrestling the Big Boss Man on this show, so there's a lot of like police references in Hogan's promo.
Yes, a lot of Law and Order puns. Yeah.
Yes, Law and Order puns. Exactly. We needed the Law and Order sounder from NBC here several times just to put this over the top. But he talks about being the judge and the jury and the executioner, I guess, against the police, which is an interesting way of putting it. And then he says something along the lines of, "I will push your fat head through the cage when Judge Hogan passes the final sentence on you."
Yes, he threatens to squeeze Bossman's fat head through the bars. He's also talking about how he's the new WWF champion because he defeated the Macho Man, Randy Savage, to win the title at WrestleMania 5. What you're going to do as Hogan flexes, and we move on to the opening theme song. The Saturday Night's Main Event music is very familiar, very nostalgic hearing it, and the video that plays behind the music is previewing the matches we will see tonight. And it ends with Hogan posing and celebrating the clip coming from the end of WrestleMania 5.
Yes, and it's very clear, as if it wasn't obvious to anyone watching at this time, but let's say you're just parachuting in and weren't watching wrestling at this point. Everything in the World Wrestling Federation is built around Hulk Hogan, and if you didn't believe that, this video will make you believe that.
Like you mentioned, we're welcome to Corn Country. And then we're told there's going to be 3 championship matches tonight. WWF champion Hulk Hogan will defend against the Big Boss Man in a steel cage. Now, Jesse was mentioning that Hogan's movie premiere might be a distraction, so his title could be in jeopardy.
Yes, No Holds Barred, the
That's
movie.
right.
That was another focal point of this show, although they never did actually show like a preview of it or clips from it, which
They
was
might have, but it might have been edited off the WWE Network's replay of.
That's a good point. That probably is more likely. I do think that we do need to just backtrack a little bit and explain the significance, not necessarily just in the television landscape more broadly, but in the landscape of pro wrestling and of what the WWF was doing at this time. Saturday night's main event was really the only thing that you got on TV at that point that gave you main event level matches. Like you did not see on the syndicated shows or really even on primetime, other than maybe in like clip highlights, you did not see Hulk Hogan wrestle.
No, never. And especially for the championship. No way.
Exactly. You did not see a world title match on regular TV. So this was, it's hard to really look through the modern lens where on major wrestling TV shows, they basically give away main events every week. And it's not that big of a deal. This is why these shows were such huge draws, because this was your only chance outside of paying, whatever pay-per-views cost at that time, or going to your local arena and seeing a major match. This was it as far as seeing Hulk Hogan wrestle or a world title defense. So that,
or just competitive matches with top guys in general. You had the majority of the syndicated show was always squash matches and maybe, if you're lucky, an angle or two.
Yeah, squash matches, an angle or two, and then one semi-competitive match. Like you'd get, in 1992, you'd get Bret Hart versus Virgil. And by 1992, we're starting to see things change a little bit, but still, you were not getting, we always talk about the joke of, main event anywhere in the world, sort of syndicated TV show main events that were obviously and certainly not that. This was actually a show where you had legitimate main event world title matches, and that's where the anticipation and the big draw in ratings came from.
Right, because you would have to see that on a pay-per-view or house shows. You'd have to go to, when WWF comes to your town,
yes,
you would have to go. And I'm pretty sure that I saw Hogan and Bossman at the Rosemont Horizon at one of my first ever live events in 1989. I'm sure I was there for that, because that was the only place you could see it. And then after it, and so in this case, we got to see some big matches on television. We got to see this Hulk Hogan championship match and advertisement constantly for No Holds Barred. I did see No Holds Barred in the theater as a child as well.
Wow. You have me beat there. If you want to call that a win, you have me defeated.
I will call it a win. I enjoyed being able to see wrestlers on the big screen. That was fun.
Did you order No Holds Barred, the match, the movie, though?
Well, of course I did. I ordered everything. Give me everything. I consumed everything wrestling at this time, especially. Tag team championships will be on the line. The champions, Demolition, taking on the challengers, the Brainbusters. I was so excited when I heard about this match. I love Tully and Arn, and as a child, I know I did not appreciate Tully Blanchard. Going back and watching these shows on rewatch, I can really appreciate the awesomeness of Tully Blanchard and how great Arn Anderson was in his prime. But as a kid, I knew I liked Arn Anderson, but I just never got into Tully. So I was very excited to get to see some Brainbusters in action.
Absolutely. And as an NWA kid growing up, it was very strange when Arn and Tully went to the WWF, and it felt strange at the time watching them there. It felt, and we'll get into it later on, it felt so much weirder looking back now.
It absolutely
seeing those guys in the WWF presentation, the whole thing, it was just, they were great. 100%. They're always great, but it was just very weird.
And watching them wrestle Demolition, which was the most WWF act. Yeah, so it was super weird. We'll get to that later. Intercontinental Championship, the champion, Ravishing Rick Rude, takes on Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the challenger, the king Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yes.
We'll get into that.
Like a storyline and gimmick I had completely forgotten. Before we get to this match, what they show us is footage from WrestleMania 5. Rick Rude winning the Intercontinental title from, I believe at that point,
the Ultimate Warrior.
Undefeated Ultimate Warrior.
Correct. Yep.
The spot that ended the match was Ultimate Warrior going to suplex Rick Rude back in, Rude on the apron, Warrior in the ring. And as he's suplexing Rude, Bobby Heenan pulls Ultimate Warrior's leg out from under him. Rick Rude lands on top, and we have a 3 count. Rick Rude wins the Intercontinental title. This then takes us to Mean Gene Okerlund interviewing Rick Rude and Bobby Heenan in back. And what I'll note about all of these backstage promos is, for the most part, they're very short, and they actually feel more. Not that WWF promos back then weren't very polished, but these felt much more tightly scripted than your normal WWF promo at the time, which I guess makes sense given that this was, happening during like a normal regular TV time slot. But it almost felt like they were reading off cue cards.
Everyone had like a line or two. That was like really all you got was like setup, punchline, done. Yeah. And yeah, in this case, it was Heenan saying he didn't break rule number 1. That rule is just win, baby.
Which is a takeoff of, I believe, Bobby Knight, the controversial and at that point legendary Indiana basketball head coach that would always say that. And I guess that's what they were going for a little bit here with Bobby Heenan and the Heenan family. The other thing I love about the presentation of this show is as they're getting ready to go to the ring for the match, we get these great wrestler specific hand-drawn logos of each wrestler. So awesome.
Each wrestler has their own logo, and that's fantastic. And that is shown in a matchup card. You get the 2 logos for every match. I think that's fantastic. That should come back. That's something I'd like to see brought back. People should have logos.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny too, because there's some where it's very clear, like guys had logos or had, things that lent themselves to a logo or a word mark. And then there's other guys that didn't. And like Jim Neidhart.
Looking at you, Boris Zukov.
Oh God. Yeah. We'll get to that later. I think that logo was up on the screen longer than he was in the ring.
And Rude lets us know that if you think Hacksaw Duggan can win, you're dreaming. And you know what happens to dreamers? They get a rude awakening. To the ring, Rude makes his entrance. No promo in the ring. We didn't get the keep the noise down while I take my robe off promo. We didn't get any of that.
No, I was surprised, especially coming off of it was the Steele Cage show where we had Rick Rude on that show back in 1986, and we sort of had the promise of what Rick Rude would be, but he was not fully formed Rick Rude yet. Here we had Rick Rude in all of his mustache and mulleted heel glory, but they didn't give us what they normally gave us with Rick Rude.
No. And after Rude's entrance, we get an interview in the back with Hacksaw Duggan, who's the reigning king. He defeated Haku to win the crown. So if you forgot that Haku was the king, then you definitely
didn't forget.
Okay, so
that I remembered because I believe Haku defeated Harley Race to win the status of being the king. I think that took place either at Rumble 89, maybe. I definitely recall that just because of the absurdity of Harley Race walking around with a crown on. Yeah, really, you think about it, the lineage of Harley Race, Haku and Hacksaw Jim Duggan all being kings is
the Macho Man would defeat Hacksaw to become the king, the Macho King, Randy Savage.
Macho King, yes, royalty, all of them.
Hacksaw's plan is to keep an eye on Heenan and another eye on Old Glory. Now, this is Memorial Day weekend here, so a lot of USA coming at you. And
yes, we also have backstage, he says, the great IC title should not be around a fancy pants like Rick Rude. Okay. Then we get Mean Gene Okerlund saying that Hacksaw Jim Duggan, who I don't believe was enlisted at the time, would in fact die to protect the flag. Which this then transitions to, I had visions of King Mabel dancing in my head here
I wrote this down. The
very first edition of our podcast. This was almost as absurd as Hacksaw Jim Duggan is out on the throne in his purple robe being carried by a bunch of jobbers.
He gets the full king entrance. It's the full king entrance.
He doesn't have his normal Hacksaw music. He has the king music. The other thing I noted at this point is that, and this takes place really throughout the show, Vince's audio is really bad. he sounds like that episode, I believe episode 3 of this podcast, where I sounded like I was 10 feet away from the microphone. That's how Vince sounded here. Like it was very obviously in a studio, which it was, but it didn't have that live feel, his audio.
Yeah, seeing this full King entrance and seeing those geeks carrying the throne out, it immediately made me think back to King Mabel, episode 1 of the podcast, In Your House, 1995. You had the 500 pounds and the look of misery on those guys carrying him out.
It was 500 pounds in motion.
Yes, dancing.
Not just the motion that these men were making as they carried him out, but he was going in an entirely different direction than they were, and it made for hard times, as Dusty would say.
Definitely different here with Duggan, but
the look of Duggan here, by the way, he gets into the ring and he is wearing this purple robe, which has like fur lining. He has a 2x4 in one hand. He's wearing the crown, and in the other hand, he has the American flag. Like, you could not outfit this man with more things. It's like 3 different action figure variants in one human being.
We get clothesline early, Rude over the top, lands on the apron. Duggan suplexes him back in, and this is the same spot where Heenan tripped the Warrior, but no Heenan interference here.
And Vince points that out, which I thought was very good. It's the one advantage. Like, Vince McMahon is not a good play-by-play guy, but when you are the booker and you are the play-by-play guy, you have full control of getting over every single point, every single angle you want to get over. And that's the one thing that Vince was very good at as an announcer.
Clotheslines all around from Duggan. He teases a 4th, but Rude just falls face first, and the crowd is very happy.
Flare flop style. And the crowd, by the way, they did a great job of shooting this crowd here in Des Moines, Iowa. It looked like a massive crowd, and people were live for this show.
Duggan charges Rude, who's in the corner. Rude gets a knee up. Climbs to the top turnbuckle, comes off with, what was that, a punch to Duggan's head?
It's sort of like a single axe handle. As the years would go by, he would do it more like, he'd come off the top, but it would be more of like a top rope clubbing single axe handle to like the back of the neck. But yeah, here it was, in a lot of ways, it was very similar to the rare times when Ric Flair as a babyface would land his top rope move that he usually would get thrown off the top trying to do. It was very similar to that.
Rude with a little too much hip swiveling leads to Duggan picking him up in a bear hug.
And a great line from Jesse Ventura here as he points out that it's impossible for Rick Rude to lose the IC title, and Vince is wondering why. And Jesse points out that Rude has the Intercontinental title airbrushed around his waist on his tights, which he actually wore prophetically at WrestleMania 5 for the match where he defeated Ultimate Warrior.
In the bear hug, we get what looked like a weak inverted atomic drop attempt, but Rick Rude saves this terrible inverted atomic drop by selling it in the amazing only Rick Rude can sell an atomic drop style. It was fantastic. It's everything I wanted, everything we didn't get the last time we saw a Rick Rude match on this podcast. So I got to see a Rick Rude atomic drop.
This podcast has actually been, in a lot of ways, charting the career of Rick Rude and his atomic drop sells. We had the Starrcade 86 show. We had the Clash of the Champions 1992 show where he was definitely selling those atomic drops, and he was in fine form here.
Duggan follows this up with a pile driver. I was terrified for Rude because I've never seen Duggan do a real wrestling move like that before. I know you go back all the way to the Mid-South days, but
yes,
you had to still be terrified of this Duggan pile driver.
This was a hell of a pile driver. I was definitely a bit concerned for Rick Rude and wondering if this was the beginning of the neck problems that would befall him years later. But yeah, it's noteworthy that Duggan was wrestling at a much faster pace than I feel like we saw him wrestle at in a lot of his WWF time period. And in some ways, this was at least a half step more toward his Mid-South days where he was just, an awesome, more of a serious, awesome brawler than the comedy character he largely was in the WWF. But yeah, that pile driver was nasty. Then he wastes time playing to the crowd after the pile driver. Rude is able to get to the ropes and break up the pin attempt. Then here comes the former King Haku out Jim Duggan goes to the floor to chase him around. He's distracted, and we go to a commercial break.
Now, did you notice that the refs were putting Haku out? One of the refs putting him out was Danny Davis, who in 87, the storyline was he was a crooked referee, got suspended, became a wrestler managed by Jimmy Hart. It appears in 89 he's back to being a referee again.
He's been reformed. It's all has been forgotten. Jack Tunney had a benevolent heart, apparently.
Yeah, and after the commercial, the refs putting Haku out has given Rude time to recover. And Rude is in control. Another punch off the top rope by Rude.
He hits an awesome standing dropkick coming out of the commercial break, too.
Duggan fires up, hits a huge backdrop, goes into his 3-point stance clothesline, hits it, knocks Rude to the outside with it. Duggan wins by count out. Memorial Day celebration with the flag. People are happy, but Rick Rude keeps the title on a count out, 7 minutes and 15 seconds.
The best part of this to me was Jesse Ventura's reaction. So we get, first off, Duggan hits him with this huge 3-point stance clothesline, his Old Glory, whatever you want to call it. Rude goes out to the floor, and we get the quickest 10 count out in professional wrestling history. Usually a 10 count takes about 30 seconds minimum. This was about 5 seconds. Everyone in Duggan, they celebrate the victory, apparently completely oblivious to the fact that you can't win the title on a count out. Then Jesse Ventura flat out says Jim Duggan is an idiot because everyone in the WWF except for him knows that you can't win the title on a count out. Vince is like, oh yeah, whatever, it's fine. And then keeps talking about being a Memorial Day celebration.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
No, Jesse was dead on in this match as he was throughout the evening. We then go backstage to Mean Gene Okerlund with Jim the Anvil Neidhart cutting a promo here, getting ready for his match with Randy Savage. He talks about how he hates Savage because of the way he treated Elizabeth and how he won the title, and then says that Randy Savage must get through him, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, to get back to Hulk Hogan and get his rematch.
You want Hogan's belt, you gotta go through me. In what universe is Jim the Anvil Neidhart? Defeating him makes you number one contender.
Yeah, it certainly isn't a universe. It's like a universe of like the AWA in the late 80s. That would probably get it done. But here in the WWF in 1989, it doesn't seem all that believable. Also, to me, this begins the trend of, which really was Hulk Hogan, his character at the time, which so everyone loves him. He's Mr. America. He's Hulk Hogan. He's great. You know, that's everyone thinks he's the best thing in the world. Yet everything he does would make you think that he's a heel.
Yeah, 100%.
Here he wins the title, and then he has a henchman stand in the way of the former champion getting his automatic rematch.
Jesse's in the back with the former champion, the Macho Man. He's coming after Hogan's title. This time he won't be distracted by Miss Elizabeth. He's got a new manager, Sensational Sherry. Sherry Martel is his manager.
And she's somehow the most normally dressed human being in this backstage interview. There is the fashion report on this is incredible. You have Randy Savage in a white and silver sequin robe, a silver sparkly headband, and those trademark Randy Savage glasses. Jesse Ventura is wearing this gold lame bandana that says Jesse on the front. He's wearing a tie-dye shirt that says something university. And then he is wearing jeans with a white belt. Meanwhile, Sherry is wearing a white jumpsuit.
He yells, "She knows her place, Jesse." So the Macho Man, he's one of my favorites of all time. And
he is the most unique character maybe in the history of professional wrestling. They then both scream, "Oh yeah!" And then as he's leaving, he says, "Come on now, we're gonna climb that mountain." Just the best. We also just briefly have to go back to the Anvil interview because as Neidhart cackles maniacally to end the interview, Gene says, quote, "Whoever says chivalry is dead has not met Jim Neidhart." Okay. Then after that, Vince says that he does not think Randy Savage can beat Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
This I did not believe.
No, no, I did not either. What I did believe, and I still believe in right now, is the graphic for Jim the Anvil Neidhart. Beautiful.
Now, I just want to say about the Macho Man, everything that he does is with an intensity that even from his missing punches to entering and leaving the ring, everything he does is something in intensity you don't see anything close to today.
He's everything he does. Everything he does, he looks like he's the best guy that's ever done it when you're watching him. And it looks like he is. There's not a moment. There's not a single millisecond from the time that he enters your television screen to the time he leaves your television screen that he is not 100% in the moment, in character, and that you don't believe everything he's saying and he's doing. He's unbelievable.
He gets the advantage with a running knee to the back of the anvil. He bounces out of the corner and gets hit with a clothesline by Savage where he goes all the way down after the clothesline.
Yes, like the sort of neck breaker drop clothesline, which we don't see enough of anymore.
No, we don't. Absolutely great. Sherry's interfering, choking the anvil. Jesse points out that she's a former women's champion, so she's more of an asset than Elizabeth was.
Yes, and a lot of this match, a lot of the discussion of this match, and really the structure of it is built around the difference between Sherry being at ringside versus Elizabeth. Sherry, like you said, very involved. Former, or I don't want to say you can really say former at that point, a very accomplished professional wrestler, whereas Elizabeth was a valet who stood, clapped, and looked concerned.
Double axe handle off the top. Anvil kicks out with authority. Anvil's on the apron, and he does a slingshot over the top rope into a shoulder block. This is the most impressive thing the Anvil does for a guy his size.
I completely forgot that he did that. Like that was a move that he did. Anvil, by Jim Neidhart standards, and particularly that this was a singles match for Jim Neidhart, I thought he looked really good in this match. He did some stuff that I did not expect. I thought this was going to be not as entertaining of as a match as it ended up being.
No, so he did have flashes of, wow, Anvil can do that. We did have shoulder blocks all around. A standing drop kick by Anvil is one of those moves that knocked Savage to the outside. Anvil hits another drop kick, this time on the floor.
Yeah, that was like,
what are you
crazy.
doing? Yeah.
This felt like one of those deals where you're playing, like WWF No Mercy or something, and they accidentally gave a guy that wasn't a high flyer a drop kick. And you're like, what? Why is A-Train doing a drop kick on the floor? That's what this felt like.
Power slam, gets a 2 count. Savage gets his arms tied in the rope. Which
another classic Randy Savage spot.
Savage.
He's up against the ropes. He's getting pounded by Neidhart, and as he falls back into the ropes sort of crisscross, and his arms are caught in it. It's weird. As I was watching this was another one of those things that I was thinking, when was the last time in modern professional wrestling that I saw somebody do this? Like, again, this isn't remotely modern. Like, I remember the Raven Tommy Dreamer chair shot heard around the world, which probably was like 95 or 96. That was the setup for it. But like in the last 20 years, I don't recall seeing this very often.
No, people don't get caught in the ropes very often. And Sherry's able to get him free from the ropes. Anvil charges, misses, spills out to the floor. Savage hits an axe handle off the top rope to the floor, and Anvil's face hits the guardrail on impact, selling this face on the floor. Savage throws him back inside the ring. Macho Man at the top hits a picture-perfect, beautifully executed flying elbow, an awesome finisher, gets the 3 count. Savage, your winner, 5 minutes, 54 seconds. I love me some Macho Man Randy Savage.
Absolutely. Same here. I love this match. I thought this was a
Super
great
fun.
use of 6 minutes of TV time. It was just, you didn't need to make it any longer because then you would be exposing what Jim Neidhart is. But for what Neidhart was, he looked great here. Savage looked great. It was, well, I would not agree that this should necessarily propel Randy Savage to a title shot. It was the perfect match to sort of get him right back on track. He's in there against a guy everybody knows and likes, coming off of the crushing defeat to Hogan. he does, he does what he needs to do. He gets the win. It sets up what the Randy Savage character is going to be like going forward with Sensational Sherry as the manager. Thumbs up all around.
It's main event time, as the format for Saturday Night's Main Event is the main event goes on early during these shows.
Yeah, I think the idea was that the main event would end around 11:30, if I remember correctly, with the idea that you didn't want to go any later than that because that's 12:30 Eastern. You want to peak with that, and then you have some other stuff after. But I had completely forgotten about that, and I was very confused when, after they do the backstage promos that we're about to talk about, they then go to the ring for the world title match.
Yeah, the big boss man was Slick, interviewed by Jesse Ventura. Hogan, you're in my jail now. You're going to serve some hard times, says the boss man.
With big sweat stains on his police uniform. It's also notable, this is, about 2.5 years after we last saw on this podcast the former Big Bubba Rogers, Ray Traylor, at Starrcade 1986. And he is definitely a more polished performer, I would say, by this point. Not as good as he would get a few years later, but he was definitely a better wrestler than we saw in 1986 and a better character.
He's absolutely a better character. He's a better wrestler. He seems a lot heavier than he was in the years prior.
Well, and that's the story of the boss man's career. Like I don't recall any wrestler with a lengthy career in the spotlight having more drastic, wild weight fluctuations in shorter periods of time than him. Because he was a tall guy. Like, he's a tall, lanky guy. Not 6'11", but a tall, lanky guy. But there were times where he put on a lot of weight, and you almost didn't even notice how tall and lanky he was, just because he was just huge. And here, this was definitely one of the larger points of his career physically.
Slick promises a big surprise. Bossman and Slick come out. They enter the cage. Slick with the mic to announce his surprise. And his surprise is Zeus. Now, Zeus, Tiny Lister, the actor, he's the villain from the No Holds Barred movie.
Not a wrestler.
And he is not a wrestler, but he
Which
plays
is
one
abundantly obvious
on TV. Yeah, and so he's the villain from the No Holds Barred movie. He will be at ringside. So again, promoting the No Holds Barred film. Hogan comes out. Zeus is standing on the steps to get into the ring,
basically blocking Hulk Hogan's entrance through the door of this cage.
So Zeus, standing on the steps, kicks Hogan and then does like clubbing forearms across the shoulders kind of move.
What it reminded me of is like when guys in New Japan wrestle Hiroshi Tenzan, the master of the Mongolian double chop, and they try to do it, but nobody does it like Tenzan. That's kind of what this looked like here.
That's a good comment. Yes.
With Zeus, it was and then he's cackling, he's yelling, he's lauding, he's on the stairs as Hogan, basically as Hogan goes up to him, he's like shaking with rage. Zeus hits him 3 times with these faux Mongolian chops, screams and yells. Apparently this is supposed to greatly injure the immortal Hulk Hogan, and we're wondering whether he's going to be able to wrestle or not. The one other thing I wanted to point out is that in the entrance of this match, before anything with Zeus, before anything with Hogan, Big Boss Man, as he comes out, he says over and over again, "I will be the champion. I am the new champion." And it's almost like he's saying it as a mantra to himself. I loved that. I don't know why, but that was one of my favorite little moments of this entire show.
Hogan's beat down. Zeus walks to the back. Boss Man throws Hogan in the cage. The Boss Man rips Hogan's shirt off of him, starts choking him with it. And we're explained that it's escape the cage rules, no pin. You can leave over the top or through the door.
Which begs the question, which always was the problem for me with these matches. In what scenario would it ever make sense to go over the top of the cage instead of go out the door?
Correct. We will see that later. And it didn't make sense then. It extra doesn't make sense now. So Hogan is able to fight back. He nails Boss Man with a boot to the face. Hogan goes to climb, which allows Boss Man to take back control.
Well, and before that, Hogan rakes the eyes. Vince says anything goes, and Jesse says, "Well, yeah, that plays right into Hogan's hands since we all know he loves to cheat." And I just like Jesse Ventura was like the voice of my brain on this show throughout, and it filled me with joy.
Yeah, he was so good here. Boss Man hit a weird spine buster.
You are being very complimentary. What happened is he throws Hogan off the ropes. Hogan sort of lunges toward him weakly, torso first, and Boss Man weakly catches him and gingerly drops him down. I don't know if this was like a prototype version of the Boss Man Slam. It didn't work. That's for sure. Work.
And Boss Man follows this up by he doesn't choose the door. He goes to climb the cage. And like we just mentioned, this doesn't make any sense. Even Jesse doesn't get it. Jesse's what is he doing? Boss Man
does almost get out, though. To his credit, the big Boss Man climbs up the cage, over the top, is almost to the floor, but Hulk Hogan pops up and he grabs him through the bars and chokes him with his bare hands.
He grabs him by the throat, choking him through the cage. And this is how he's able to pull him back up. And he's pulling him up by his ears as well.
He transitions from the throat to the ears as he pulls this 300+ pound man up. Then as they're both at the top of the cage, he's choking him over the top of the bar.
I did like that.
That was awesome. And then we get the craziest spot that probably happened anywhere, at least in North America in 1989, and something that I did not recall.
I don't remember this, and I will never forget it after I saw it. How is this not replayed constantly for every show? This was absolutely incredible. I literally wrote "holy crap" in my notes because Hogan superplexes the Boss Man from outside of the cage back in. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah, this is not a deal where like Boss Man is already partially half over the cage, or they're it's a cage match where they're both standing on the top rope, so it's not that impressive. He muscles him over the cage, back in, and the crazy thing too is the way they're standing. They're not in the corner because you couldn't do this if you were both standing in the corner because you have a cage there. So they're slightly off to the side of that corner. And then he has to kind of twist so that he isn't superplexing him like onto the like middle of the top rope. As they come down, they crash with a mighty thud, and the city of Des Moines, Iowa, loses their minds, and as rightfully so.
As they should.
I lost my mind
in 2020 watching that.
Yeah, in 2020 watching this as a 39-year-old man who's been watching wrestling for 36 years and has seen anything and everything you could possibly see as far as crazy spots in pro wrestling. And this got me out of my seat and going crazy on the couch here. This was incredible.
Boss Man is every bit 300 pounds taking this move. And
at least.
Yeah. Both men are down for a long time, selling it like they didn't pop right back up and go into some more. No, they were both down for a long time.
We get Earl Hebner comes in, and even the announcers are like, well, what do we do now? And Hebner checks on both men, and then even though this is a cage match, he starts counting both men down. Jesse Ventura then says, and rightfully so, this is a shame for the Boss Man because he can't win the title this way. And then Vince gets mad and is like berating Jesse, and Jesse's like, what are you talking about? There's no argument against what I just said. So that again, Jesse popped me as he did throughout the show.
Hogan sits up at 8 and then smartly starts crawling for the door. The Boss Man holds Hogan's leg to keep him in.
Well, the Boss Man lunges like a last gasp of desperation as he's down and out too, and grabs Hogan's ankles to keep him from getting out. And then we get the biggest baby face in the world gets out of this jam by raking the Boss Man's eyes again.
Slick throws a chain into the Boss Man, and Hogan's getting choked out with the chain. Boss Man puts it around his fist. Hogan counters with punches. Both men ram each other into the cage at the same time. Both men are down again.
This spot is like, it's a half step removed from like if two men, you always get the spot where like one guy goes to choke a guy and then the other guy chokes him. And then you're like, I want to see wrestling physics take hold and them somehow both choke slam each other at the same time. This was almost that ridiculous, but
it was absolutely ridiculous. Yes.
Like, how do you both run into the cage? Like, that was one of those examples of pro wrestling simultaneously at its worst and absolute best.
Hogan gets a hold of the chain, puts it around his fist, punches out the boss man with it. Hogan throws the boss man into the cage 3 times. Boss man's bleeding.
Back and forth, like one side of the ring to the other, which is a cool visual.
Boss man's bleeding. He falls down after the 3rd time into the cage. Hogan with the big leg drop. And then he starts to make his way over the top of the cage. And Slick on the outside takes the ref, gets into the cage, and he's holding Hogan long enough for the boss man to recover. The boss man tries to go up, but he gets crotched on the top rope. Hogan gets handcuffs from Slick, and he cuffs the boss man to the top rope. Now, boss man doesn't panic. He slides the handcuffs down the rope to the door. Very smart.
He's handcuffed to the top rope, but he's not like on the other side away from the door. He's on the side of the door. So he can, like you said, shimmy his way down to the door just fine.
Yeah, I thought that was very smart. Hogan's trying to go over the top rope, and it's a race now, but the boss man can't reach the floor because of he's handcuffed to the top rope. So Slick, with the key, tries to uncuff him. Hogan down the side of the cage. He's out first. Hogan's your winner, still WWF champion. Boss man gets free, but Hogan rams him into the cage on the outside. Slick is stuck in the cage with Hogan, and Slick gets thrown in the cage as well. Hogan celebrates with the title belt and the boss man's nightstick, and he puts on Slick's hat too while posing. Hogan, at the peak of his popularity here, 10 minutes, 1 second on that match.
Well, you talk about the peak of his popularity. This was the promise of AWA Super Sunday 1983 in its full glory here as far as Hulk Hogan as the champion. This was his first televised successful defense of the WWF title. I, as an 8-year-old kid, despised Hulk Hogan.
I was not a fan either.
Hated him with just a burning passion. Going back and watching this match, and I also, by the way, hated WWF cage matches over the top rope or through the door. Looking back at this, I loved this match.
This match was great.
It was fun. It was, if you're going to do the escape the cage thing, they did it perfectly. You had the race to get out of the cage. You had just so many different things. You had the big cage spot. It only went 10 minutes, so we didn't have just never-ending attempts to escape the cage, which, I hated. I go back to the Bret Hart, Owen Hart match at SummerSlam 94 cage match, which you would think would be great, and you would think, you'd think I'd love that, but it just felt like 100 times they tried to escape the cage and didn't. This was exactly just the perfect WWF escape the cage match for this time period.
Heenan, Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, the Brainbusters, 2 men who were so dominant as members of the Four Horsemen in 86 through 89, including a long run as NWA World Tag Team Champions. It's so weird to see him here in the back, interviewed by Mean Gene.
Yes.
Arn says the belts are already ours. We just need to go down and pick them up.
Well, and it was also like these 2 guys, the focal points in a lot of ways, along with Ric Flair, of the National Wrestling Alliance for so many years in the 1980s. 2 great promo guys. Arn in particular, one of the all-time best promo guys. Tully, certainly no slouch in that category. Here they have Bobby Heenan with them, so Bobby's going to do the majority of talking, and that's great. Bobby's incredible. Bobby has a great line that his only worry in this match is that his men are going to contract lead poisoning from from Demolition's face paint.
Yeah, from the cheap paint that Demolition uses on the faces. Yeah,
I loved that. I thought that was great. But it was so weird being so familiar with Arn and Tully from their days in the NWA and in the Horsemen to see them here with like each getting one line in this backstage promo.
After the Busters make their entrance, Demolition isn't
no entrance music, by the way, which that isn't edited out. They had no entrance music back then,
which is fine. And they had the same gear that they had in their NWA days, just with Brainbuster black jackets now.
Exactly, the sweet warm-up jackets, the Brainbusters warm-up jackets. So this was a great act. Basically, it was already a great act. Then you add Bobby to it, and it's even better. And then we get Mean Gene back with Demolition, and I'm very familiar with Demolition, but I had not thought about in a long time how completely just complete ripoffs they were of the Road Warriors as far as characters. Axe was so old. He was Bill Eadie, the masked superstar for many years gone by. He says that Bobby Heenan and the Egg Beaters are nothing but chumps, and I love that. That was hilarious. And then we have Smash. I don't recall anything he said other than that he was much more animated of a human being than he was as Crusher Khrushchev at Starrcade 86. And he spoke with about as much of a Russian accent here as he did in 1986. And then we get Mean Gene Okerlund saying, "That's what wrestling's all about."
Yeah, they said nothing. They will demolish them. This was lame. Demolition. They have an awesome theme song still. Oh, yes. Rick Derringer, like, great work.
It's like, here comes the Axe, here comes the Smasher. We're Demolition, a walking disaster.
It's
awesome.
It's an awesome song off the Pile Driver album of 1987. If you're unfamiliar with the Demolition theme song, go treat yourself. Go pull it up on Spotify. Go pull it up on YouTube. Watch the Demolition theme song. Just an awesome song. Heenan.
And then while you're on Spotify, by the way, you can find Wrestling at Random.
You should
and add
subscribe
that to your favorites as well.
100%. Heenan with a distraction early. It allows for an early double team by Tully and Arn. Smash battles back. Demolition double team in their corner, beating down Arn. And it is all Demolition early.
All Demolition. Like you, my thought watching this, having just watched and reviewed Bash at the Beach 2000 for this podcast, was that the way Tony Schiavone talked about the perfect event being the accidental tag team champions who never got any offense, that is how the Brainbusters actually were through the majority of this match. I'm watching it like, I get it. They're heels. They're managed by Bobby, so they're just going to take offense. But they just kept taking offense and bumping and taking offense for like I said, the very old Axe and the very Barry Darso Smash. This was not what I bargained for here when I fired up this show.
Tully knocked outside. Smash presses Tully over his head and throws him back into the ring.
Well, Tully gets knocked outside, but I think unless this is tell me if I'm wrong if you're going to get to this. He gets knocked outside and he lands full force on Bobby Heenan.
Yeah, that's coming up later. Yeah, that's coming up in a minute. Yeah, so after Smash throws Tully back into the ring over his head, which was impressive, Axe then immediately clotheslines Tully over the top rope. He lands on Heenan on the outside. And Heenan is mad.
Heenan is legit mad. Heenan had neck injuries that were a large part of why he transitioned out of being an active pro wrestler and into a manager. And I had visions of, was it Clash of the Champions in 1995 or 1996 when Brian Pillman grabbed Bobby Heenan by the neck at the broadcast booth and Bobby flipped out and went to the back and eventually came back. I thought that's what we were going to be in for here. I shrieked with terror when this happened.
He was trying to hit the ring to fight Demolition. He was getting held back by the Brainbusters, which was hilarious.
It was. This was one of those things that clearly wasn't planned and made the match better.
Still all Demolition for this entire match so far. Smash with Tully up in a choke, holding him over his head.
It was sort of the tree slam without the slam.
And Arn hits the ring and takes out Smash's knee from behind. And finally, Arn goes to work. The first offense of the match from the Brainbusters.
Thank God.
And we got an awesome spinebuster by Arn Anderson.
Yep, we had the spinebuster from Arn that was immediately preceded by a hot shot, an old Steve Austin stun gun a couple of years before Austin started doing that here from Tully. We get a huge kick out from Smash after the spinebuster that got the what a maneuver treatment from Vince, as he clearly didn't know the name of this move. Then we get Tully in and we get the Tully Blanchard strut.
Yes.
which I did not have high hopes for that we would get in this match, but we did. And yeah, we have very quick tags here. And my notes simply read, Arn Anderson is the best.
He's the best. We had a great spot where Tully just stood in Smash's way so he couldn't get close to the tag, and that allows Arn to take advantage again. Anderson, he falls, but he locks Smash's leg with his leg so he can't tag, but Arn can tag Tully. It's that
classic thing that I can't remember which of the two announce crews were calling the Andersons versus Rock and Roll Express at Starrcade 86 that we reviewed, but they pointed that out, how that was classic Andersons wrestling, and that's exactly what this was here from Arn in 1989.
And then we had Arn and Smash. They punch each other. They both go down. Smash is going for a tag. Arn grabs him, just holding him to keep him from tagging as Tully sneaks around the ring. And Tully yanks Axe off the apron. Smash unable to tag again. The match breaks down into a four-way. Referee tries to put Axe out of the ring, but Axe throws him down. I immediately gasped and said, no! And
yes, me too.
And the bell rings. Demolition are disqualified. Arn and Tully win by DQ, but Demolition keep the titles.
Jesse rightly points out that Demolition clearly got themselves disqualified to keep their titles. Vince McMahon disagreed, and Vince McMahon was wrong.
He was wrong. And both teams, they fight back up the entranceway to the backstage area. 9 minutes and 15 seconds. It was great while the Busters were on offense. I loved it. I love watching those guys. And yeah, 9 minutes, 15 seconds. Just a lame finish.
It felt like a 9-minute match that was it felt like it was going to go 16 to 18 minutes. And then it just ended with that disqualification. And I guess if you want to go super meta and super kayfabe, why shouldn't that have been the case if Demolition was wrestling the match and like, oh man, we might not be able to beat these guys? That's exactly the point to where they would just get themselves disqualified. So disappointing, but I guess it worked.
Savage in the back with Jesse. Savage says he's the number one contender. He wants his belt back. And he also points out that, continuing the Sherry versus Elizabeth comps. And he points out that Sherry doesn't have wandering eyes. Oh, yeah.
Well, and then we get all three of them. They end this backstage promo with Sensational Sherry, Macho Man Randy Savage, and Jesse the Body Ventura all doing the oh yeah as they go to the commercial break.
And Jeremy Deemer on the couch as well. Yes.
Oh my God, so good.
Boris Zukov with Slick is in the ring trying to sing the Russian national anthem.
Because what signals main event more than this? Obviously, we know the format of the show is different than the normal shows, but it still was jarring.
His singing is interrupted by the music of the Superfly, Jimmy Snuka. Superfly with a chop follows it up with a backbreaker on Zukov. Huge splash off the top for a 3 count. A short squash of Boris. 1 minute 11 seconds was the runtime for the match, and I think you're right. His ridiculous logo and graphic was on the screen longer than he was in the ring. 1 minute 11 second squash.
So weird that this was on the show. Like, did Dick Ebersol personally request Jimmy Snuka be on this show? Like, it was such a throwaway thing that there's really no need for it. But Snuka did a cool splash, so that was that. Then we go to a commercial break. And then we're backstage with Mean Gene Okerlund and the victorious Hulk Hogan.
I've been having problems with Zeus for a long time now. During the filming of the movie, he was a problem.
This Zeus guy, which I don't know why that made me laugh so much. But like, this Zeus guy.
He pushes No Holds Barred. Go see it like I did. And then we're told the next Saturday night's main event will be in July.
Well, I like that he literally said, this is my personal invitation to you to watch this movie. And now I'm thinking, wow, you took Hulk Hogan up on his personal invitation to go watch his movie. He says something like, you've seen me do this, you've seen me do that, but you've never seen me where there are no holds barred. And then, yeah, we go to Jesse and Vince. Jesse informs Vince that we'll have another Saturday night's main event special in July, and or Vince informs Jesse, and Jesse's like, "Oh God, I got to deal with you again," which that was just the perfect way to cap off a great night of Jesse Ventura being Jesse the Body. And yeah, that was the show.
The big angle, obviously, is the debut of Zeus as a wrestling character and the promotion of the No Holds Barred movie, and they're teasing rematches with Savage and Hogan.
Explain, if you can. If not, we'll just work our way through explaining it before we go. The No Holds Barred, the match, the movie pay-per-view that I briefly touched on, because this was something that is, to the best of my knowledge, completely unique in pro wrestling pay-per-view history. I recall it at the time, and I recall feeling very good as an 8-year-old that I did not ask my mom if I could order that when I felt like there's only so many pay-per-view bullets I had in the chamber at the Summers household, and I was not going to fire it for this show.
No, and nor should you have. I remember, because I saw the movie in the theater. Now, I can't remember if the match was... Because I remember Zeus had a match at a SummerSlam, right? It was Zeus and Savage against Hogan and Beefcake, right? That was a SummerSlam main event.
So that might have been SummerSlam 89 then.
I think that was SummerSlam 89. So
I hope it was. I hope this didn't... I can't imagine this going on for a year.
Yeah, so No Holds Barred, the match, the movie, was an event that was in December of 89.
Wow.
And they showed the film in its entirety, followed by a match previously recorded in Nashville, Tennessee. And the main event was Hogan and Zeus on opposing tag teams. Oh, it was Hogan and Beefcake against Zeus and Savage. Okay, so that was that match.
Well, that answers the thought in my mind of like, how could you possibly have Zeus in a singles match given what we saw here?
They immediately tagged
this
him
Zeus
with
guy.
Savage.
It was not good.
Beefcake began feuding with Savage, and at 1989 SummerSlam, Hogan and Beefcake again teamed to defeat Savage and Zeus. So both we got to see. So that this was in a cage match on this pay-per-view, and then they had a rematch at SummerSlam. So.
Let's hope we don't get any of those shows anytime soon.
Yeah, no. So we don't need to see Zeus wrestle.
No.
But and
there's no chance of the randomizer picking the movie, is it? Please tell me there isn't.
It is not. It is not currently on a streaming service. So
okay,
lucky us. But do go if you haven't seen it. Go out of your way to see it. It's a slice of life. It'll
slice of life.
It'll take
that
it
is
in 19.
One way of putting it.
It'll take it in 1989. It'll give you everything Hulk
happened.
Hogan was in 1989. Yeah,
it occurred.
Best match for you?
I think I feel pretty safe in saying that it was the Hulk Hogan Big Boss Man 10-minute cage match. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I did as well. I also enjoyed Savage and Neidhart. So I want to go Savage Neidhart for me. I did enjoy the Hogan Boss Man match as well. Those are good picks. Worst match, I mean, Zukov and Snuka was a nothing.
Yeah.
I hated the finish of the tag match. You could tell me Duggan and Rude as well. So I'd say for non-Zukov and Snuka, because that was
non-Zukov content on this show.
Yes.
I honestly think I would go with the Intercontinental title match, and it wasn't bad. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But as much as I hated the finish of the Brainbusters Demolition match, I thoroughly enjoyed the several minutes that we had, and they were only a couple of minutes of the Brainbusters on offense, more than I enjoyed anything in Rude and Hacksaw. But really, nothing that is just like turn your TV off terrible.
No.
On this show, such an easy watch. I'm very glad that the randomizer gave us this after what we put up with on the last podcast.
It was super fun. And 1989 me watching this was so excited because this was, one of the rare glimpses you would get into a promotion versus promotion match with, because the Brainbusters were they were such, NWA tag team staples that
Demolition was it as far as along with a couple other teams, but they were the top guys for a while.
Yeah. So this was your first inner promotional type of feel that you had in quite a long time that you'll have in WWF. So for me, I remember how excited I was to see that match too.
It's a very good point. If I recall, that was something that the After Mags, the Pro Wrestling Illustrateds of the world had a pretty big feature on this match, if I recall correctly as well.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Definitely a fun watch on the WWF Network, WWE Network. Watch WWF Saturday Night's Main Event. This was really fun. And make sure you help others find this show. We rely on your referrals and your subscriptions. So rate, review, subscribe. All those links are available at wrestlingatrandom.com, and that includes the entire back catalog of this podcast. We mentioned several different shows. Feel free to pull those up, enjoy those as well, and tell your friends about them. We really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, thanks for joining us.
Definitely. Thank you, Jeremy. This was the palate cleanser I needed after Bash at the Beach 2000. Listen to that show, by the way, if you haven't, because our podcast about WCW Bash at the Beach 2000 will chronicle ridiculousness that you never imagined could take place in professional wrestling. But I'm glad there's only one of those shows to have to watch, and we got this one this week.
Definitely go give that one a listen, and make sure you interact with the show on Twitter. We're looking for your feedback there, and continue to listen to those back catalog episodes, and that one especially. And we'll be back next week with another one. So make sure you subscribe to find out what the show will be on Thursday. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. And I want to thank everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.